Two squad patrollers believed to be members of Nanduwe Taxi Association were gunned down at Nancefield Hostel. For more on the story, we're now crossing live to our reporter Mnisi, who's following the story for us. And these are live visuals from the scene where Linda Mnisi is at. Linda, a good afternoon to you. What do you know so far of what's transpired on the ground? What is happening there?
All right, so very good afternoon to you, Tammy. As you can see, vehicles of the Forensic Pathology Services here outside Nancefield Hostel. It's believed that two squad members believed to belong to the Nanduwe Taxi Association were gunned down early today. So as you can see there, police attending to that scene. The details at this point are still a bit sketchy, but from the preliminary information that we got from the police is that they were called to the scene and informed that two people that are believed to belong to that taxi association have been gunned down. So just shortly before you crossed to us, what we saw were the two bodies being loaded on these vehicles. Some family members watching and really gutted on this side. I'm going to ask Tulani just to pan and show you some family members really gutted at this point. Of course, they cannot speak to us as they have just heard the news. They've just gotten to the scene, to watch these scenes unfold. Obviously, those are heartbreaking scenes unfolding before their eyes. Some of the community members also gathering around here as they witness this, tragedy. You'll remember that the Nanduwe Taxi Association is one of those that was involved in a taxi feud here in Soweto, culminating in that taxi closure or the route closures by the then Transport MEC Jacob Mamabulo. It was attended to by various MECs in that year. And once again, what we're seeing, taxi feuds, rearing its ugly head here in Soweto. Tammy?
Really a very tragic situation that is unfolding there, Linda. Do we know whether this was a drive-by shooting? Any suspects? What do we know?
Well, we don't know much at this point. We'll hear from the police later on exactly the events that unfolded here. But I had an opportunity to speak to the brother of one of the deceased, and he says he also works around here. And earlier on, when he passed, he saw him sitting in the vehicle, saw him and greeted him. He passed, and then later on he was told by some of the people that he works with that he in fact had been gunned down. So it's unclear at this point what could have happened or who could have shot them. So those details we'll be hearing then later from the police. Tammy?
Has the area been cordoned off as a crime scene yet, Linda?
Yes, it has indeed been cordoned off. As you can see, it is indeed a crime scene. What we're seeing, the tapes from the police, as you can see, members of the community are unable to come close to the scene, as police are actually making sure that they do their work with no interference. People are unable to access the area at this point. This road is the one that leads to Maponya Mall, Tammy, just from, if you're coming from Dube or you're coming from Midlands, it's leading to Maponya Mall. So the road itself has been cordoned off, but traffic behind me is of course moving freely at this point as police try to make sure that they continue with their work.
And those who were gunned down, have they been positively identified as yet?
Well, family members are still standing with us here on the other side of the tapes, but it's unclear whether they've been able to identify their loved ones. Earlier on, we heard one of them saying, well, he did in fact leave the house wearing a red jacket. So when he was in fact taken out of the car, that's when she was able to see that it was him. But in terms of formally identifying the bodies, that has not happened yet. I presume then it will be a process that will unfold after the scene has been dealt with.
You mentioned earlier on, Linda, that two of the bodies were seen that just before we crossed to you being put into the cars. But the cars that were actually shot at, those taxis, are they still right there outside the hostel?
Yes, Tammy, indeed. The car that was shot at, if you can, I'll ask Tulani to just show you the car that was shot at. On the other side of police, as you can see, it's a car that's written patrol, and it's usually used by people that are patrolling in these areas, people that are working for the taxi associations in Soweto. So these are two squad patrollers. They usually make sure that all the taxis are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and everyone is abiding by the rules, especially when it comes to issues of routes. So they are the ones that are usually stationed in the corners, making sure that all the taxi drivers that are driving are adhering to the rules that they have to follow, in terms of making sure that they follow the rules of the association as well as those of government.
I noticed that there are several markings there that have been put by the police. My assumption is that all of those markings reflect where bullet holes went into the car. Can you confirm that?
Well, it's unclear, Tammy. From where I'm standing, it's unclear. And that, of course, we're expecting to hear from the police in terms of the number of bullets that have been fired on these two people that have since been declared, or rather that have been shot. So we're going to be hearing more on that information when the police are able to speak to us. But from where I'm standing, I'm seeing multiple bullet holes, which perhaps could indicate that there was, bullets that were fired on the vehicle itself. But those details, of course, will be revealed at a later stage by police who will be able to speak to us.
Based on what you saw of the two bodies as they were being transported away, do they look like they're still alive? I mean, the reports that we have is that they were gunned down, but do we know the state that they were removed in? Were they still alive and conscious? Did they look like they still had life in them, or were they, perhaps declared dead upon leaving the scene?
Well, Tammy, I'm no expert to confirm that, but let's get word from a police spokesperson from the Moroka police station. He'll be with us shortly to kind of perhaps give us details. He's Captain Khoza from the Moroka police station. This is indeed the area that they are policing in Nancefield. You'll remember that taxi violence was actually a thing in the area over the past couple of years, which led to various route closures. Those routes have since been opened, but it seems the violence still continues, and we'll be getting, of course, exactly the details surrounding that in terms of what could have possibly happened and whether the two men are indeed dead. But at this point, we are not experts to confirm anything. We'll hear from the experts or from the police if in fact they've deceased.